We just all have wanted to celebrate each other as Black women artists in the theater and in the other genre in which we work, in other disciplines. And we wanted to find a way to bring the same kind of energy that we bring to each other in our friendships into our working conditions.
Hello, and welcome to Art Restart, where we explore how artists are reinventing their fields and building a new landscape for the arts. I'm Pier Carlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, brought to you by the Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts.
And I'm Rob Kramer, the founder and CEO of Kramer Leadership, whose mission is to advance leaders for the greater good. This week, we bring you Pier Carlo's interview with performer and writer Eisa Davis. Pier Carlo, can you tell us a little bit about Eisa?
As you mentioned, Eisa Davis is a woman of many talents, all of them considerable. She has authored several acclaimed plays, including the historical drama Bull Rusher, which was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, and Angela's Mixtape, an autobiographical comedy with music that chronicled her coming of age in Oakland, California, under the tutelage of the powerful women in her life, including her aunt, the legendary activist Angela Davis. Eisa herself also starred in the play's premiere. As an actor, she has amassed an impressive resume on stage, receiving an Obie Award for sustained excellence in performance for all of the work she's done on stage in New York City. And she's also acted a lot on film and TV, where her many credits include recurring appearances in the award-winning series House of Cards and The Wire. And as if that weren't enough, she's also a singer-songwriter who has released 2 albums, Somewhere Else and Tinctures. And in recent years, she's also been writing for television, including on 2 seasons of the Netflix series She's Gotta Have It. Eisa spoke to me from her home in Brooklyn. I asked her to tell us about the creative projects that are keeping her busy and excited these days.
Well, the thing that's keeping me the most excited, it's hard to choose because I have a few creative children and I don't want to say I have a favorite. So I'll say a few things. I'll say there's this really amazing project that I've been working on, which is an adaptation of a memoir by the youngest member of the Little Rock Nine. So what this is a limited television series that we're working on. And Carlotta Walls-Lanier is her name, the woman who wrote this book, A Mighty Long Way. And we've just been developing it. I'm in the process of revising the pilot and getting the whole series together. And what's interesting about it is that it's just a story that, takes on more and more resonance. It's about desegregation in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957, and how so many of these issues of violence and the response to change, to the call for equality, the call for justice, what kinds of conflagrations that brings. And so I've just been really, really, really fortunate to be able to work with Carlotta and this beautiful group of producers. And one of those producers, actually, I think the reason why I have this job at all is Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, he and I knew each other back in the day when we both were in the Hip Hop Theater Festival in New York. And a lot of people don't know that Chad was also a playwright and wrote really amazing plays in verse and in the hip hop aesthetic, So we knew each other from back then. And I think the reason why they reached out to me as a writer was because of that time where he and I worked together, where he actually was in a couple of plays of mine, workshops of plays of mine. So it's obviously been a huge loss with him gone so unexpectedly. And we're doing this project in his honor in a lot of ways,
Does it have a home yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that we'll be taking around, to see where the right home is for it. So
And
that's
Carlotta is still with us.
Yes, she is.
Oh wow.
Yes, she is. She's such of an amazing character, and I love getting to know her. Both through her words, imagining her life, and then of course having conversations with her, here and there. It's remarkable because I think there are so many ways in which the way that I was raised, in the family that I was raised inside of, I almost identify more easily with this generation. I guess it's just this kind of boomer generation, of my mother's and of my aunts and of Carlotta's, And I think it's obviously that that's a function of childhood, right? Where their story, and stories and the struggle and movement that they were in and continue to be in took precedence. And so in some ways it's like I feel like I know that so well, it's like second nature. And then at the same time, and in some ways this is kind of a segue to another project that I'm working on, there's all of the ways that I'm trying to establish my own voice, my own aesthetic voice. And this project that I'm working on at Performance Space New York, which is the old PS 122, is this really amazing group of artists, Black women artists. There's Okuyekpakwasili, who's been on this series with you. There's Liliana Blaine Cruz, amazing actors like April Mathis, Stacey Karen Robinson, Joie Lee. They're unbelievable people who have all gathered for this. And basically, we just all have wanted to celebrate each other as Black women artists in the theater and in the other genre in which we work and other disciplines. And we wanted to find a way to bring the same kind of energy that we bring to each other in our friendships into our working conditions. And so we've been able to, with performance space, just really develop our own kind of residency that is going to have offerings where we're working on some of the unproduced plays of Kathleen Collins, who is this really powerful literary foremother that I think a lot of us are just starting to get to know over the last 6 years. She passed away in the 80s at the early age of 46 of breast cancer. And her daughter has made it her mission to distribute her work, get her films showing, and get her writings, her plays, her short stories, unproduced screenplays published. So we're exploring Kathleen Collins' work, and then we're exploring A Piece of Mine and doing it in this way where we're having these outdoor performances that are, COVID safe.
When did this start, and who pulled it together?
I pulled it together, I guess.
Wow. Okay.
I guess I would say that, but
does it have a name?
Yes, it's
Okay.
called Afro-Femininomy. And, but when I say I pulled it together, that really only means that, I've been doing the organizing because, I couldn't have done any of this unless it weren't this group effort and unless it weren't all of the many creative ideas and thoughts about how to bring us together. That came from, the director, Charlotte Brathwaite. I came to her and I was like, what can we do with these plays? Because Nina Collins, Kathleen's daughter, was like, I really love these plays, this quartet of plays, Begin the Begin. And I was working on them myself and kind of directing them myself. And then I started talking to Charlotte about it. And she started helping me see the plays in a way that really would allow us to center the Black woman's interiority that's embedded in these plays. And then we brought them to this group of artists that, we're all just friendly with. And then we have, we got this opportunity through Performance Space to have funding and have, basically we get to take over the theater. and I was just like, okay, let's figure out a way to do this with these outdoor performances, with a kind of web-based radio where we can post film and sound recordings of our sessions where we meet, and also films that people are inspired to make in this process as we explore these issues around health, around our way of holding ourselves as artists at the same time that we're struggling with all of the disparities and violence that we have to contend with as Black women. And then also like this really cool like installation with music and lights. And I think I'm going to be, in this tank full of water and like singing. There's going to be a pasture of hair. There's going to be a way for performers to be able to interact sonically with the audience, but not be in the same space. So we're just trying all these really cool experiments that, again, I don't know, if we would have been able to have this opportunity were it not for the health emergency that we're in. And also were it not for the calls for our field to change the way that, we engage artists, right? And so this way of just opening up the space and saying, here's some funding, here's the resources, here's all of the things that we've had as, these primarily white theater establishments and institutions. And, let's see if, we can offer those resources to some of the voices that may not have been allowed in these spaces prior to this, and just see what it is that you all want to do. And that's kind of, I mean, this kind of model of just taking over the space and just saying like, here, this is what we're going to do. It, to me, solves so many of the issues, that we've had when it comes to theater, when it comes to the art world, when it comes to film, television, music. It's just like, just hand over the resources and we'll do what we can do with it and make some magic and make some excellence, in community.
What is it about this particular experience that you might not have been able to do in the past? Why is it happening now? Because it's not just the fact that you got some money, right? That you got a grant.
That's right. That's right. I mean, in some ways that facilitated the ways in which we're able to make work, but the collaboration had already begun, right? Because the relationships had already started, the admiration for each other's work had already started. And so just like, we didn't need 2020 for clarity on racial justice or all of the various inequalities that we suffer from, it's been crystal clear, that once we work together, and don't have to spend all of our time explaining what's important to us or why we want to do things in a certain way.
Explaining to whom?
Explaining to a theater establishment, right? Like, instead of having to have, this text that I then, of like, say, my work or whatever, that I then give to a theater and say, will you produce this or not? I didn't have to go through that process because I already know amongst all of us as artists, like, we are going to support each other's work no matter what that is. And then with Performance Space, they simply said, this is Jenny Schlenska, who's the artistic director there. She said, I don't care what you all do. Just make something together. And I was like, that's perfect. That's really what I want, So it just, there's this way in which, we just kind of get to leapfrog over so many of the kinds of censorship or, just like the endless proving of value, that all of us have had to do over the course of our careers, when it comes to our work, when it comes to our narratives, when it comes to our stories and our priorities and values,
Do you talk about with your fellow artists about the marketplace of the arts, about money, not only making a living wage, but also how your art is supported by the marketplace?
It definitely comes up. And that was something that we prioritized as we were creating the pay structure for this was, I wanted to think about taking care of people through salaries in a way.
Oh, wait, let me stop you. That's interesting. So you got this grant, you got the space from Performance Space, and then it was up to you to decide how the pay structure was, how the money was going to be dispersed?
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
We
that's
have,
also revolutionary, right?
isn't it? Isn't it?
And
Yeah. I
so,
mean,
yeah,
that's, we
so
got the
tell
space and
talk,
we got the money. Yeah.
but it was not dictated how it was going to be dispersed. So, yes, how did you go about coming up with a plan?
Right. Well, as the producers in our crew, we've been working with an amazing, amazing project manager, Deidre Harrington, who's worked with New Georges. She works there, and she also works with the Movement Theater. Also, Jennifer Harrison Newman, who's a dear friend of mine, childhood friend, but is also an artist, choreographer, producer. And talking with them, this whole concept of a budget as a moral document came up. And I was just kind of like, well, what's important right now? And what's important to me is, not spending money on a set, obviously, because we're not having a production in the same way, right? But even were we to, I would still want to have the same emphasis on taking care of the people, you know, in a time where so many of us have lost salaries, due to not being able to work in a place where audience gathers or where, we gather as artists, right? So I just was like, how can we give as much money as we can to all of the artists, regardless of what, time you're putting in, kind of like a universal basic income. How can we give that to you, regardless of what it is that you do in this project, And I think that, that's been really crucial. And I also wanted to think about if there are some artists who have higher needs than others, like some of us, like I'm working on this television project and I've been able to take care of my own needs that way. So my need as an artist with my fee structure is less than someone who's only been working as an actor and has not gotten the same
And lost
salary.
her income, right?
That's right. That's right. So we were
So, was
trying to,
this by consensus
well,
or
you know, um I would say that it was more an idea that I had, and then I just kind of ran it by everybody, and I said, this is what I'd like to do. And like I said, I was hoping for this kind of thing where some people would get more and maybe some people get less. And I think that it ended up with, pretty much everyone getting an equal amount. But I think I'll probably end up getting less just because of just because, I've kind of used my salary as like the contingency for if we go over budget. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean it's basically, the way that this has all kind of come about is just that, I've just been trying to think through it and lead it and then all of the other artists, I go to them as thought partners, like, what is it that you want to do? Or how do you feel about this? Do you think that's a good idea? Should we do this? And also it's been a real learning process for me because I've, worked in all of these places where I'm, it's just been about like, get it done, handle it, result, result, result. And what's been really great with working in this group is that I've got a Deidre or I've got a Jennifer, I've got a Charlotte, a Kaneza, Liliana, all saying like, just slow your roll. Like, let's respond to this. Let's take time to do things on our own schedule and our own pace. Again, privileging our health, our ease, our care, as opposed to trying to meet a deadline. Trying to meet some version of obligation that we feel we have to have because, of course, we are the way that we've been trained and the way that we're expected to behave is, we have to do it twice as good, twice as fast. So yeah, it's been this really wonderful evolution for me to learn how to work in this way where I'm both responsible but also ceding control.
when the pandemic is over and
Mhm.
large institutions open up again and you start working with them again in the theater as a
Mhm.
performer and a writer, how do you think you'll be able do you have a plan for getting them to change? For instance, I mean, the thing that you said, budget as a moral document, is incredible. How are you going to convince larger institutions that that is a priority, for instance? How are you going to get them to understand that prioritizing your health as an artist is as important as prioritizing your performance?
Right, right. Well, thankfully, it's not only my job to do this. I'm so glad it's not only mine.
Right.
It's the responsibility of those organizations. If this is important to them, then they get to take on this burden. And I think that the list of demands, was a really important blueprint, right? That kind of kicked off that conversation. And I think it's simply, do you care about justice and equality? If you don't think it's relevant, then you're going to resist kind of rethinking your organization. But if you do think it's important, then you'll listen to these coalitions, these multiracial coalitions, you'll listen to people with disabilities, you'll listen to people who are the original caretakers of the land that your theater is built on. And you'll, start thinking about how all of the sort of imbalances in whose stories are important can start to be rectified. And so I think it's really like, again, all of these coalitions, all of this collective work, and these ways that we keep joining together in order to continue to articulate what it is that we want. And of course, this is going to keep taking a while, because we can do a lot when we put our backs into it, and we recognize that the work is going to be hard and it's going to require change, but it can be done. It really can be done. It's going to be rough, and it's already been really rough, but ultimately it's only for the good. I mean, there have been all of these reports that have come out recently about how when you just basically make your institution more inclusive, when you make your institution something that is actually working toward climate sustainability, if you divest in fossil fuels, I know that seems kind of off target, but I don't think it is. I'm talking about just in general that, when you start moving towards these goals of justice, you actually can have a higher yield when it comes to your money making. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the thing that obviously,
That's how you convince the capitalists.
that's right. That's how you get people to see, like, oh, this is actually going to be good for your bottom line too. It's like you get your optics and you get your little money. But it's like, but sharing those resources is also really an important part of this piece. And that's where we are, I think. I mean, you see that with everything coming out of the Biden administration right now. And I think that same kind of ethos should really suffuse our theaters.
I love catching up with her, Rob. Eisa and I actually went to college together, so we've known each other a long time. But I'm curious, having listened to the interview, what stands out for you about the way she makes her art?
Well, what was striking is the opportunity for her and her colleagues to really reinvent their process with the performance space and the work they're doing. She talked about these goals of justice, which to me is around shared values of social justice and equity between sort of quote unquote corporate theater owners and artists, and getting to reset how they do business with their own project and work in the performance space.
Yeah, I love you're talking about shared values. I think oftentimes if artists collaborate, they try to come up with shared artistic values, but coming up with shared moral values
Right.
is, I think, just as crucial. And it's clear that she and her collaborators have done that. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, I really enjoyed getting to know her. Pier Carlo, thanks so much for bringing us this interview.
You're very welcome. I had a great time.
If you'd like to learn more about Eisa and read a longer version of this interview, you can go to uncsa.edu/artrestart. And if you enjoyed this interview, please let us know by leaving us a rating wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to subscribe, because we're going to be hearing from fascinating artists in upcoming episodes, and you don't want to miss them.
Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Rob Kramer.
And I'm Pier Carlo Talenti. Thanks for listening.